I recorded this whole video and then realized the sound wasn't working on it. So I'm going to try again. And this time I'm going to do it with this set of notes. If you are taking notes on paper today, I need you to take those notes and keep them because we're going to put them in our notebooks as soon as they come in. So you can go ahead and title them Characteristics of Life 816. And you're going to start by writing these two questions in your notes and answering them. A few housekeeping things while you do this. Please be aware that I'm not going to pause very long between everything. So if I could have a sub or one of the students pause, that way you can take time writing it. I would really appreciate it. I went ahead and pulled the Chromebook down on the counter. That way it can be easily paused while you take notes. In my first video, I wrote them all down, and I've already written them once, and I feel like I'll rush through it if I write it again. So, all right, our two questions. What are a few characteristics of life that all living things have in common? And describe what you know about non-living things. So characteristics that all living things have in common might be something like moves or needs water. List a few things that you think all living things must have. And then describe what you know about non-living things. So like your desk or table. What do you know about the things that are not living in this room? Right, if you would, please pause the video while you think about this and then continue. Okay, number one. Number one is that living things are made of cells. So throughout this presentation, you will write what's in purple up on the board. I'm writing it right here. Well, I've already written it right here, but that way you know what are the key points. So living things are made of cells. Ordinarily, I might try to take you into the lab and look under a microscope at a few cells, but unfortunately our microscopes still need to be fixed, so maybe one day. All right, one cell could equal life, but also lots of cells could equal life. That's what I've written in our notes. A single-celled organism, they have everything they need to be self-sufficient. In multicellular organisms, there is this specialization that's going to increase until some cells do only certain things. So, for example, you have heart cells that help your heart to beat. They go on this very specific beat. And then you have brain cells, nerve cells, that help your brain to think. You're not going to want to have heart cells up in your brain. It wouldn't do you very much good, and it actually would cause you harm. So all we need to know, though, is that life could be life if you have at least one cell. You could have one cell. Well, you were, started as one cell, and then you continued on to have a lot of cells. Bacteria are always one cell big. So knowing that, we know that there is a level of organization. There are going to be levels of organization through most living things. So the level of organization that we see here with humans is that a bunch of cells are going to be making up tissue. And a bunch of tissue will make up an organ. Many organs will make an organ system, and an organ systems added together make an organism. So the levels of organization here show us that your bodies are very complex and they have to have certain things to do certain things. So you have to have nerve cells in order to make brain tissue, and your brain tissue has to form together in a certain way to make your brain. Your brain, along with your spine and other nerves, are going to be an organ system. And you have to have many organ systems, your cardiovascular system, your skin, your skin system, all of those systems together would make your organism, which is you. All right. Number 2, living things obtain and use energy. They have to first obtain it. How do you obtain energy? You obtain energy through eating. All living things must acquire energy from their environment. Plants and photosynthetic bacteria and algae can get energy from the sun. So we call that photosynthesis, right? Animals get energy from eating plants or other animals. That's us. We eat. And I wanted to speak on eating. Eating is getting energy from other plants and animals. You can't eat something that has never been alive and get energy from it. That's why you're not supposed to eat things that aren't food. And we teach you that at a young age because your body won't digest it or won't digest it well because there's no energy to get from it. So highly processed foods like Takis or McDonald's, highly processed foods have been so processed that a lot of the good energy in it has been stripped. And so that's part of the problem with eating those foods is it doesn't give you what you need. It gives you energy to store, like fat. And foods that are more not organic in the sense of grocery store organic. We're going to learn the difference between science organic and grocery store organic, but more scientifically organic foods, your meats, your vegetables, your carbohydrates, your proteins, all those things that are less processed can give you a lot of energy. As long as it's not very fatty. Anyways, we'll get in that another time. And then bacteria and fungi get energy from decaying plant or animal matter, and that's called decomposition. So all living things obtain and use energy. Okay, living things also respond to a stimuli. So they're going to do that through a stimulus response. Living things make changes in response to their stimulus in their environment. So my main stimulus in the morning is my children. If I don't have to get myself up for work at 5:45, 6 in the morning, then you better believe I'm going to have a different stimulus that is not my phone alarm. It's called Carter Cash, and he is 5 years old. And when the sun pops its head up over the horizon, just a ray, that boy is up. He is not a night owl. He is a morning person. And the second he gets up, he comes in our room and he asks for breakfast very loudly. So that stimuli causes me to respond. And my initial behavior, because I am not a morning person, is to want to yell, "Be quiet, turn the lights off." But in order to mask that behavior, I have a stimulus of a different response. I put on my noise muffling headphones. That way it doesn't feel as stimulating as it is. And so we are going to respond to stimuli like light, sound, smell, touch. Those are stimuli that we respond to. There are also chemical stimuluses or stimuli that plants and other animals will adhere to. And a behavior is a complex set of responses. You behave the way you do because of many complex responses to stimuli you had as a young child. And your behavior is going to be different based on that. My older brother is a year and a half older than me. And when I was learning to walk, or a little bit after I learned to walk, when I was about a year and a half, I fell down 3 steps that were concrete that went from our back porch to our yard. And when I fell down them, I fell all the way down them on my face and scabbed up half my face. So his behavior from there forward, anytime I stimulated him by going near steps, he would respond by screaming. And because of that, over time, I think many instances like that of me getting hurt or me getting in trouble caused him to behave in a protective manner of me. All the way through high school, if I did something where I was mouthing to another student and he was afraid that I was going to get hit because I was being mouthy or because I thought I was being funny and I was definitely not being funny and it was just making someone angry, he would try to protect me. And that was his behavior, his protective behavior. And so behaviors are just something that we do because we've been stimulated in such a way for so long. All right. Number 4, living things grow and develop. There is a difference between grow and develop. Cell division is the orderly formation of new cells. You have to form new cells in order to grow. If you're going to get taller, you're going to need more cells in your bone and skin and heart. You're going to have cell enlargement. This increases the size of your cell. Your cells grow to a certain size and then they divide. So if you're going to have a cell that's this big, it's got to get bigger and bigger until it can divide, and then those two cells split apart. That's how our cells divide. And an organism gets larger as the number of cells increase. So what I wrote here is growing is getting new cells, and then cells grow. So the cells have to first create new cells, and then you grow those new cells. So if you grow a new fat cell because you ate a really heavy dinner and it's storing that fat cell is going to grow the more fat you eat until it splits off and makes another cell, and it'll keep growing, and that's how you gain weight. You can also ungrow those cells as you get larger, as you grow older and exercise and eat better. But there is also a development. So even though you can lose weight because of growth, you're not going to become less of the person you are. You're not going to suddenly have brown eyes instead of blue. You have genetics, and then you also have development. So that development is going to be different stages in life, going from infancy to toddler, from toddler to child to teenager. The development is not going to stop unless there is a problem. So your growth is just general everyday life. Development is what we go through as humans. All right, number 5. I'm just going to have to move my camera. Number 5, living things reproduce. Fix that. Living things reproduce. Reproduction is not essential for the survival of an individual, but it must occur for a species to survive. So if we want the human race to continue, we are going to have to reproduce more humans. However, if you want to survive, you don't have to have a child. So it is needed for species survival, and then all living things are going to reproduce in one of 2 ways. And I do want you to write both these ways down with the definition. Up here in cell growth, we do that. It is not asexual reproduction, however, because these are just our cells, not our human being. If we were to asexually reproduce, you would split your body in half, and then there would be 2 of you, and then you would both grow until your bodies were full. We don't do that. We sexually reproduce. And this is not to say sexual intercourse, so go ahead and get that misconception out of your head. Sexual reproduction means that there are 2 parents. 2 parents. Asexual reproduction, 1 parent. Bacteria reproduce, some algae and fungi reproduce asexually, but a lot of things sexually reproduce. So you have to have 2 parents for sexual reproduction. So trees are sexual reproducers, squirrels, fish, most jellyfish, I think. Anyways, those are the 2 types of reproduction. Okay, number 6, I squished that at the bottom of my paper here. Living things adapt to their environment. Adaptations can help with survival. So adaptations are traits giving an organism an advantage in a certain environment. Variation of individuals is important for this healthy species. So for birds, that's the easiest one we can look at. In order for birds to live in the same environment as bigger animals that eat similar things, they have formed these beaks that make it best for them to hunt that. So if birds eat seeds and stuff like that, and it lives in a same tree as a squirrel who also eats those things, if the bird can crack those open with its large beak, it's going to get more of the food than another animal would. So in order to have a survival of a species, you want to have a lot of different types. That way you have options of survival. So let's say that you have a Nintendo Switch, a phone, and a PlayStation, and you are ready to go and play video games. Well, you look at your phone and it has died, and you're like, great, I don't want to use, or it's at 10%, and you're like, well, I don't want to use all the battery, I don't have a charger on me. And you look at your Nintendo Switch and it's dead, you can't play it. But the PlayStation is plugged into the wall, it has a TV, and you can play that. And so having that variation of technology in your home makes it so that when you sit down to play video games, you have choices and you know at least one of them will survive. Okay, I use that example as if you guys don't just play on your phones all day. I have an 11-year-old who has limited screen time, and that's exactly what he would look at. Well, if these two things don't work, then what are my other choices? And so you need to have variation in order for this survival of species. As the environment changes, species must also change to survive or they go extinct. So variation is going to have that health. That's why things go extinct, because it cannot compete with the things around it. All right. Let's flip over to my number 7. Living things are made of DNA. That's all I put there, in fact, because that's all you need to know about DNA right now. I'm going to go in greater detail of DNA in next semester, actually, but you guys just need to know living things are made of DNA. And DNA is our genetic material. It tells us who we are. Living things are based on this universal genetic code. All organisms store their complex genetic information that they need to survive in a genetic code, and they store it in a molecule that we call DNA. The last one we have here is number 8. Living things maintain homeostasis. And you need to know what homeostasis means. It will be a vocab word soon. If not this week, it might be this week actually. Homeostasis is the process by which organisms keep their internal conditions relatively stable. This is different from an adaptation, because an adaptation is something you pass on to your offsprings. But a homeostatic response is something that you as an individual are going to do just because you need to survive. So how do we maintain the same body temperature? We sweat when we're really hot and it helps cool us off. And we shiver when we're cold to help warm us up. So those are 2 examples. Other examples of maintaining a relatively constant internal temperature, other examples of homeostasis are a constant internal temperature, your pH, and salinity, how salty your body is. These are all going to help do that. All right, quick review. These are 8 things that could help us tell if something is living or not living. This doesn't mean that all living things must have all 8 of these, and we will talk about that in greater detail tomorrow. However, living things are going to have these, and they're going to have other things as well that they might have in common, but not just these 8. They may not be able to do one thing for some reason, like maybe the individual can't reproduce, but if the species can, then we can say it's a living thing. What you're going to do next is you're going to click on this video, or it's also on Google Classroom. You're going to watch that wrap-up video, and then you're going to take a quiz. If you have a working Chromebook, I expect you to take the quiz on the Chromebook. If you do not, under the window next to the phone caddy, there is, I believe on the 4th file back, it says Biology 816 Characteristics of Life Quiz. you're going to take that quiz either on paper or on Google Classroom. And if you take it on paper, I just want it in that purple tray at the front of the room. You may use your notes on these. In fact, I insist on it. You should also take some notes on the video. So go ahead and title that part Video Notes to help yourself take that quiz. Okay. We need to remember that these notes are going into our notebook as soon as we get it. So just keep up with these things. If you have a hard time keeping up with things, put your name on it and put it in the purple tray, and I'll hand it back to you when we get our notebooks. Check Google Classroom for all other information, because if you're watching this video, then you were either absent or Miss Foster had a rough time at home and we couldn't do a Google meeting. So I am looking forward to seeing you all soon, and have a wonderful day.